Hello chess fans, today we're going to be continuing our series on the London system, and the variation that we will discuss today is the Jobava London. And in my opinion, Jobava London is a super tricky opening to face as the black pieces. However, if you are very well prepared, you will surely get at least an equal or maybe even slightly better position out of the opening. You can also get a much better position if white doesn't play precisely at all. But you know, that's life. That's how chess works. So without wasting any more time, let's get into it. So after d4, knight to f6, bishop f4. Here we already have a slight deviation here. The main move is d5. Let me start with g6 because in the last video I talked about these g6 systems, and basically you want to play it like King's Indian, right? You want to play g6, d6, bishop g7, castle. And if you play this system, you will need to be prepared here. However, after knight to c3, white is threatening to play e4 and take the whole center. So in my opinion, bishop g7 or d6 are both not the ways to go here. Because white plays e4, and then those positions resemble more like the Peerts or the modern opening rather than the actual London system positions. So in this video we will stick to the theme of the London system, and I will recommend the move d5, which stops e4. Now to first of all focus on this position, what's going on here. Bishop on f4 is looking at c7, and the knight on c3 wants to jump to b5. If the knight on c3 ever jumps to b5, we want to meet this with knight to a6. Remember, if white plays knight to b5, we play knight to a6, and we defend the pawn, and we're totally fine. So white knows that, so white doesn't really want to jump knight b5 this early without having a specific goal here. So what white does is white just simply continues developing, plays a move like e3, bishop g7, and then h4. What h4 does is it immediately threatens h5, and it tries to take advantage of this fianchetto structure. So for example, if you castle, white can play h5 immediately, and after knight takes h5, white can actually sacrifice the rook here and then get this position, which is actually better for him. And even though we are up material in this position, we are up in exchange, it's not really beneficial for us. There's going to be a huge attack, let's say e6, there's bishop to d3, and we are under tremendous amount of pressure here. We can play f5 and something like this. However, we need to be very careful. Moves like knight to f3 and then maybe knight g5 in some positions is coming, and the position in general is super dangerous. So we don't want to allow our opponent to play h5, so we don't castle quickly. We actually play h5 ourselves, which parries this h4 move. And after knight to f3, we castle, bishop e2, and here we play c5, sacrificing a pawn temporarily, but opening up the diagonal for the bishop. Very similar to a Catalan idea, because our bishop is fianchetto, we play c5. We are trying to open up the diagonal. So white takes the pawn, and here we go queen a5, trying to win it back. And here there are many things that can happen. I will show one line that is super cool here. After castles, we take back the pawn, and here after knight b5, we play a6, and if white jumps into c7, trying to get our rook, we play rook a7. And in this position, there are various ideas of playing a move like b6 and then rook takes c7, giving up the rook for the knight and this bishop on f4, which would obviously be very strong for black, because two pieces, generally speaking, are better than the rook. Now, of course, white is going to know about this, and white's gonna try to rescue the knight with moves like a6, a3, b4. However, this is a very interesting position, and I'm not really gonna go into more detail here because this is not really in the theme of the opening, and we have already left the opening stage. We're in the middle game here, so let's stick to the opening, and let's go back here. And instead of g6, let's discuss the main move, which is playing d5 immediately. Now d5 is a very normal move. We're controlling e4, we're opening up the bishop here. Here, once again, white plays knight to c3, developing, and here we play e6. This is the main line. This is not my preferred choice, just to be clear here, but this is the main line. And here, after knight to b5, black plays knight a6, e3, bishop e7, normal development, knight to f3, castles, bishop e2, and here we play a very interesting idea. So we play c6, kicking the knight, and then we play c5. And what we are claiming is that white should not take us on a6. This bishop on e2 should not take a6 because it has already moved, right? White made one move with the bishop going to e2, and then white has to make another move. And if white takes this, white is losing time, pretty much. And it is a very good claim as well. This knight should not be taken by this bishop on e2. So white castles here, and after bishop to d7, knight e5. The position can go in many directions here. One move that's super interesting is knight to b4, for example, not allowing capturing on a6 anymore. And after takes, bishop takes, we go into a position like this where white plays knight to b5, and here we play this move, bishop e8, no longer allowing white knight to take the bishop on d7. So I think this is a very interesting way to play. I like this for, it's good for both sides. I slightly prefer black, but according to the computer, this is totally equal. There's no advantage here for either side. But my recommendation, though, would not be to play the main line. And my recommendation here instead would be to play this move a6. And now a6 has two ideas in mind. One, and the more direct idea, is that it stops knight b5 immediately. So that's good. But the second idea is that we want to play b5 quickly so we can put the bishop on b7 and control e4. So let me show you. After e3, here we play b5. And after knight to f3, we go e6. White plays a move like a bishop to d3, for example, bishop b7, castles, and here we get into this position right here. We can play c5 immediately, or we can start with knight bd7. It's up to you. It's a matter of taste. Let's just say c5 here. And the thing is, white has to be very precise. White has to be extremely precise. If white wastes any time, for example, let's say white plays a move like a3, which doesn't do anything. It does something. It stops b4, right? Which is an idea that's looming, but not something you want to go for right away as black. Here, what black can do is play c4, bishop e2, and continue developing with bishop e7 and knight d7. Keep in mind, this knight does not go to c6, it goes to d7. Why? Because the knight on c6 is blocking the bishop. We don't want to block the bishop. It's all about controlling the e4 square. Whenever you're playing a d4 position, the two main pawn breaks for both sides are c4, e4, or c5, e5 for black. Here, white can never play c4 because the knight's blocking the c pawn, and also there's a pawn on c4, so that the c4 move cannot be executed by white. So what white should do, white has to do is execute e4. And if we successfully control e4 as well, then we're going to have an advantage as the black pieces. So we are disallowing c4, and we are also controlling e4, and we have an advantage. Of course, white can play more precisely here. What white should do is capture on c5 immediately, and then go queen e2, and then e4 very quickly. I would actually recommend perhaps starting with castles first, and after e4, you can do a couple of different things here. You can go h6 according to the computer. You can go d4, blocking this knight. If you go with knight d7, there's a cool line here after e4. You can actually go b4 in this position, and white has to sacrifice a piece. After takes, we take on c3. And this line is not something that you're going to see in your games, most likely, but I'm still going to show it because I think it's pretty cool. After queen takes e7, queen takes e6, we go queen e7 as black, queen to b3, bishop takes f3 because the bishop was hanging and we want to win time here. G takes f3, and then we have to play king f8, not allowing any of these rook e1 ideas, which would win our queen. This is a super sharp position though, but regardless, it is something that can happen. If you're prepared in this line, go ahead and play it with black, but it is dangerous. We're up a piece, but the position is still near equal, but black is slightly better. So that means white has some compensation here. You have to be very careful. That being said though, generally the opening ideas are going to be to play b5, c5, and put the bishop on b7 quickly, controlling e4. That is the main idea here. Now, instead of early b5, there's also e6. And what e6 does is it basically, we want to get a slightly better version of the b5 line, but it's not that simple because here, after c5, white cannot play bishop d3. White has to go bishop e2 because bishop d3 allows c4, and that's why white has to go bishop e2, and we reach the same exact position, but the bishop is on e2 instead of d3, which favors black, and this is a better way to approach this position. However, the problem with e6 is that after e6, this bishop is blocked on this diagonal, so it's not looking at the g4 square anymore. And what white can do is, instead of playing knight f3, white can play this move g4. And g4, g5 is one of the most precise ways to play this position. I think this is the best move, definitely being aggressive in this position with white. And here, play would go something like this. So we go bishop b4, white plays knight e2, we castle, g5, knight to h5, bishop e5, and not allowing captures there, knight d7, and moves like a3, bishop a5, not taking on c3 because the knight would recapture, and then this is hanging. We have to be careful there. Let's say h4 is played. We take on e5, and then we play c5. We get a position like this, which is equal. I would prefer black slightly because of the two bishops and because of this bishop specifically and the development as well, but it is a very dynamic position and it is dangerous, so you have to be very careful here. So that's one of the ways to play. So just to summarize the idea that I want to show you here, you can either play e6 or you can play b5. They both have their pros and cons. I would still recommend b5 just because you don't really want to go into this g4 line. However, if you're comfortable going into this g4 line, then probably e6 makes more sense because you're getting a better version of the c5 b5 position. So because the bishop cannot be developed at e2 in a lot of lines, because here knight f3, c5, bishop d3 is not a great move because of c4. So white is forced to pretty much develop the bishop to e2. So that's the improvement here for black. But the con of this move is that it allows g4. So you have to like pick your poison. Regardless though, in my opinion, all positions lead to an equal or slightly better position for black. And I think that Jobava London is probably good for black. I don't think it is a very precise opening for the white pieces if you know what you're doing. So that is it. I think I did not miss anything, I'm sure, but if you have any questions regardless, you can leave them in the comments and I will reply. If you liked the video, please consider liking, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow the channel right now, and I would love if you were part of that journey. So that's it for today, and have a great day.